What are the core differences or the things that got built or were changed between October, November last year, 5 closers, and now? And back then we were funneling a shit ton of cold traffic.
We were spending $3.5 grand a day on ads. Now we're spending 800.
When you're so deep in the weeds, it's like very messy, and it's also so easy to get lost in the weeds. Mm-hmm. So what I'm curious about is like, how do they go about first, like kind of simplifying that whole process?
That's another thing. It's like half of Hormozi's videos are like an hour and a half, 2 hours, like straight, not like a curation video, just stimulant for 2 hours. And that's what I want to know is, how do you prep for that? Because that will give me such an ideal scene of what to replicate. I'm ready to get back to work. We haven't even done the event yet.
Right away when I watched it, I was like, we've had 40,000 people that it redirects to say, apply to PGA for one-on-one coaching afterwards. No reference of you, no reference of PGA, no, like they have no clue what it is. And Jeremy pointed out, he's like, I don't know what the that was. Like,
good to go. All right.
We just roll right into it.
Cold open, hot
cold
open.
Well, we did that with the last Espresso hour because we didn't have anything to talk about, and it worked out.
Yeah, it did.
But I think how we can do this one, we're here in Vegas, which is dope. This is what, podcast studio? What's the name of this?
Oh, what's
Podcast Lounge?
Podcast Lounge.
Yeah, Podcast Lounge. Okay.
All right, well, it's March 18th. On the way over here, I was refreshing like our month-to-date, year-to-date numbers. Month over month up 40% relative to last February. And then month over month or year over year for March up 38%. Doesn't always feel that way.
It doesn't feel that way.
It does not feel that way. But I think it's worth like calling that out because 40% growth is sick. It just doesn't necessarily feel like we have.
No, it doesn't.
Because we're more, I can't really explain why though. Like why it doesn't feel that way when you're so in the weeds.
Yeah. I don't know why it feels that way either, but we're building.
Yep.
We're on the way. So what do you want to talk about today?
I don't know. I think recapping where we've been since we were here January 6th, January 7th, something like that.
Yeah.
Which was only 2 months ago. Feels like a lot more has happened since then. Maybe some like highlights that we've covered since then. I don't know. Anything top of mind for y'all?
Yeah, maybe just update. We're here for the Hormozi Advanced Workshop, which will be cool. We bought the upsell. We got upsold. I think maybe starting with like handful of questions of things that we're looking to learn, which would be good.
Nice.
You know, the CRO upgrades, things on the success side. I know Katie and Andrew have a bunch of those questions. Media team.
So we got, I guess, a little context. We got to meet with their head of marketing, and they did this big onboarding survey, which I thought was really well done to diagnose your constraint. And then they, based on the way I answer the questions, I kind of knew marketing was our constraint, and I answered those in February when it certainly was. It's still close to the constraint right now, but it was definitely then. And so then they connect you with the department head of that specific thing to do like an audit. And so I've met with him twice now. And my understanding is that they create a deck based on everything you cover. And it's like, you can tell they're reverse engineering the NPS score because he's asking me like 4 or 5 times in the thing. So if we covered this, this, and this, like you'd say that the VAM day was a home run for you.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, okay, interesting. Yeah. But I think this would be a home run, and this one and this one and this one. And now we got this like list of 7 things. And he sent me the email. I was like, we could cover them all, but like, obviously we want to focus on the main things, but no pressure to pick. I was like, no, we want them all because we have plenty of things to learn. And I think if we don't come back for like 6 months, each of those things will be something that will be valuable.
When do they give us the deck?
Tomorrow. So they present the deck, and basically they present the deck tomorrow and he walks through it. I'm not sure exactly, but I'm pretty sure they do everyone's VAM at the same time. Like, no, not at the same time, but sequentially, everyone that's there for the VAM day. So you can also learn from other people's decks.
Cool.
I think. But if that's the way they did it, that's genius.
Yep.
Because then you get to passively learn from other people too, while also getting yours taken care of.
Yep. That is really cool. It's interesting in hindsight because I remember at the end of last year, we were sort of debating what what masterminds we wanted to use this year, what things we wanted to join. I feel like this happened sort of serendipitously and maybe at the perfect time.
Definitely.
So yeah, I'll be really curious what we learn.
The model is really interesting because there's no Slack, there's no synchronous support. They fly everyone. You have to fly yourself out here. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I can only really act on like 7 or 8 pieces of information over like a 6-month period anyway. And so getting to ask that directly, there's no other, I don't know, maybe there's some programs you could join that would allow you to do that, but you can't get that information very easily. And so it's worth the price for us. It's just like, I want these 6 things answered because we see it once and then we can implement it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, this is for you too, what do you think they're going to tell us that we already know that we just need to hear? And or what are they going to tell us that is like completely left field?
That it's going to be extremely boring to get to the next level from here. I think that's what we will be reminded, because I was already reminded of that on the call. He's like, you are, and we've been working on the CRO since that call, because I don't know if I sent you the replay, but it was like, oh yeah, you have enough visits to have the number of enrollments that you want. Therefore, you have a CRO problem. And I was like, okay, interesting. Didn't think about that. But he's like, yeah, I mean, from lead to close, you're at like 2%. That could be 4. And that's the number to optimize. And like, how do you do that? It's 20 A/B tests on 6 pages to go from 30 to 34% on 6 pages, which is a 30% increase. He's like, you don't have to you just do everything else the same, but it's like, it's just an attention thing. You have enough attention between us, especially with how Ash has been like really dialing in the lead flow on social. So that's what I'm most interested in, because that was the first time, and we started to do this, that I was introduced to a new thing. It's like, I had never done CRO. We haven't done that much CRO together. It's like, yeah, but if you test one page 20 times over the next 6 months, your business will grow. And that we've literally run almost 0 of those. So I think that was the new thing for me.
Yeah. You feel the same? Anything different?
I agree. What I'm curious about is to learn like how, because on paper that sounds very simple and very like straightforward, but in reality it's actually when you're so deep in the weeds, it's like very messy, and it's also so easy to get lost in the weeds. So what I'm curious about is like, how do they go about first, like kind of simplifying that whole process? Like, what is it that we don't know, so we can like skip that and shortcut that, whole learning curve? And then how do you operationalize like actually doing those tests and like staying organized and like actually learning? Because we can make changes all week or all month
when we do,
but we're not often. But then we're not fucking learning anything. And so that's what I'm curious about.
It reminds me of when we were here last. I thought one of the best nuggets was, if you're going to change something, don't change it for the entire business, isolate it. And I feel like every time we've tested things, we're like, oh, we'll change the landing page for all of our traffic, or we'll send an email to everyone on our list. And I feel like another thing they're going to tell us is test and break these things out. Yeah.
It's really mostly an organizational problem in terms of, we have these 6 pages, you make 1 change a week, you write down what the change was, you write down the result. It might be as simple as like, we make a sheet with 6 tabs for the 6 pages and say, what was the change? Here's the weekly numbers, bang, bang, bang. But what I'm most interested in is he's going to give us a CRO checklist in terms of like, test this or test this or test this or test this.
Not all at the same time.
Not at the same time. And so pick one and then run it for a week, see if that made any improvement. And if you do that on 4 pages, like the very first thing we did after that call was getting more specific on the actual numbers to test. We were not capturing, we're looking at funnel wide, like total number of applications divided by leads, not doing anything with how many of those came from in the last day they opted in and then applied, or was this a 6-month time? And we were looping that all in together. Completely different optimizations to make, to try to make those 2 numbers improve, that also improve the actual number that we're trying to fix. So, I mean, it paid for itself in that front of like, okay, cool, I have a new game to go and play to try and get this right.
Yep. So CRO organization, basically.
That I think is the number one thing he's going to talk about for us.
Yeah. a process for doing
exactly.
that. On the success side, yeah, the big question that I've had, and it's been something we've wrestled with for a year now, is what to do with Slack. Because we have 1,000+ people in Slack, some obviously more active than others.
Right.
But I think the big question is, what's the pro con of leaving people in there so that you have this direct line of communication for some sort of other program, and or removing them by going, okay, like if you don't take things away, then people just linger, you know? I don't know what they're going to say. I'd be very curious what their opinion is on that.
My hunch is that we actually have a different problem in that we didn't have a 16-week deadline for the first 500 people. We actually can't do anything about those people. But then when I went to Katie and Andrew and I was like, can you get specific on like how many people who are past quote unquote 16 weeks are actually still active asking questions? It was only like 80. So we're really dealing with like an 80-person problem that really, if they're that active, we should be trying to upsell them. You know, it should be like, hey, I'd love to give you more support. I can't give you any more. That'll obviously be like a case-by-case thing to manage. But my take on Slack is 4 months of direct coaching, 6 months of question-based Slack ask, then turn them on to read-only. And so you can see what's going on, but you can't message.
Can you do that as
I'm pretty sure you can do that. If not, then we'll have to work around it. Or you remove them from like active channels and you just leave them in one. But the thing is, like, they can't see their old messages past a certain number of days, 90 days anyway. Yeah. So I was just trying to get specific with them of like what the actual problem is. Having access to Slack go away at the 6-month mark is probably the solution. And then you can have like a last chance to stay in. And then we could almost like continuation sell just Slack if we wanted to. But all these changes that we would make are like 6 months down the line.
Yeah.
You know, because we have to implement them on new contracts going forward.
Yeah, I'm also just thinking in terms of the Liftoff offer stack is I'd love to hear some of their thinking around the things that you need to take away in order to incentivize people to go forward. Because if you don't remove enough things, there isn't enough incentive, you know?
Right.
So yeah, I'm just sort of thinking through that side of it. I'm curious, like you get pinged for Slack stuff all day.
I used to.
Oh yeah, I guess we've improved that.
I've been removing myself slowly from that.
Is there anything else that's like still happening that you're aware of that is a glaring problem?
I do agree with Dickie on that. Like it's definitely like an 80-20 where it's a tiny percent of people who are asking all of those questions and are super active. I mean, like I wonder if the midwit thing there is just tell them, hey, you're not allowed to ask more questions.
Yeah.
You know, that could also be interesting because, or like you are allowed to ask questions if you join Liftoff.
It's really that we should be saying, hey, I'd love to coach you one-on-one.
Right. Exactly.
I'm responsible for the whole community right now. Would love to coach you one-on-one. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to answer this volume of questions from you.
Yeah.
And see what that happens, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like we need to come up with some, not like stock answers, but yeah, we need to train CSMs on how to handle that.
But it all comes back to like getting specific on how many are, because it's easy to say like, oh, Slack, we're leaving everyone in. But it's really like there's 30 people who send 90% of the messages past that time.
Yeah.
It's probably just like,
go
to them directly.
Telling them.
And then tell them. So,
yeah. When we fix all these little CRO tweaks, how do you feel about tapping back into pure cold?
I mean, we would just run the same process, but I've been talking to Daniel Fazio a good bit, just jamming on like offers and things like that. And his current quip is that cold traffic doesn't buy coaching, they buy offers, if anything. And so what's
the distinction? Just standalone?
No. So offer would be, I'll get you 5 high ticket ghostwriting clients. In the next
done
4
for
months.
you.
No, not even that, but just like results. And so PGA would have to go much harder on like promised result, risk reversal, like guarantee, all that kind of stuff that I just don't think is necessarily
the way
necessarily worth it. And like, I don't buy stuff from pure cold very much. You know what I mean? And I don't think that if we were going to, I would take the Jeremy's approach. He calls it the Venus flytrap, which is you go big, broad reach campaign with your like best videos to bring people in. And then it's like a 12-step ad funnel and not direct response to cold.
Yeah.
I've done direct response to cold enough. It's just you're fighting a tough battle. It's like they don't like you, they don't like me. They don't like that's the immediate start. Is like I don't like either of you until you convince me otherwise, which is much harder on the sales team too.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah. That's cool that he calls it that, because that's probably what I would advocate for, is more just use it as reach and education,
right?
And not as conversion.
But longer term B2B will get you X number of views on X number of platforms over the next Y days. That's a promise you can make and build a very compelling sale around to cold. So that's what they do with their cold email. It's like, we'll deliver XYZ number of cold email responses over the next so-and-so days, or you don't pay. Right. And that's far more compelling, especially B2B cold. It's far more compelling because you're just dealing with someone who's like making logical decisions based on ROI.
Interesting. What do you feel like they'll tell us on the brand/content side, media?
That's the one I'm most interested in, because I think we lack. I've been reflecting on like, where do we lack the ideal scene? CRO is one of them. We're going to get that. The end-to-end process that allows Alex to sit down and talk about one topic on video for 40 minutes, but there's probably 90% of the work that happens from other people. That's what I want to see. I want to see the full media supply chain of a YouTube video, how much pre-work is done, because like as I was making those Gamma docs, just as like a V1, I started to recognize the bottleneck to us filming, especially me, is just prepping the documents to talk over. And that is...
It takes all the time.
That is 90% already done. Like I pulled that thread, copy pasted from Notion, put it into Gamma and made some tweaks myself. I was like, okay, that was minor stylistic. Why couldn't we have someone full-time just prepping YouTube slide decks for us? And then the bottleneck to filming, you could film 10 in a week, because those are 30-minute voiceovers that you're pretty much just reading slides. And if you weren't the one creating them, boom. And if let's say you gave 9 bullet points on a voice note and that was turned into a document from someone else, where could your filming capacity go? Pair that with a decently edited intro and the Tela upgrade that makes it look far more like you're watching you and the screen rather than Loom. You're just kind of like staring at text.
Yep.
That is what I think is our like inflection point on media.
Do we have the editing capacity for it?
Well, that's that's a problem.
Find out. Yeah.
But that's very solvable. That's probably the most solvable of all of them.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll share this, but the thing I would love the most is to see, like actually tangibly see the document that Alex stares at when he records. Because I've done a bunch of different, I think there's 3 sort of styles I've discovered. There's either pure, you just riff, which could be as simple as here's 3 bullets. And those 3 bullets are like, okay, that's first topic, second topic, third topic. The second is bullets with more context. It could be prose, it could be bullets within bullets. It's like a more in-depth thing. And then the third is full script. Just like you are reading it word for word. And I've tried so many times to figure out, and it probably is different for each video, but I would love to know which one of those it is and like the degree to which it's tweaked, like how much context is given there versus how much is it just riff on that. Because again, lacking the ideal scene, like I could be over here doing super in-depth scripts that take 12 hours to write. And I'm like, oh, that's actually not even the best way to do that,
My take with YouTube is we're still in the data gathering for the most part and trying to validate with volume. At least I feel that's where I'm going to be going forward, because as I was prepping some of those digital writing school modules, we don't have any YouTube videos on any of that. And that is like the number one thing that we grew on Twitter talking about.
Yep.
And we have no YouTube on it.
Really crazy is someone tagged me on Twitter that they were talking to, might have been Perplexity, one of the AI tools, and they were asking it about like how to write on Twitter, and it curated advice and then pulled like 5 sources, and we were 3 of the sources from our old SEO articles.
Interesting.
So that's another fascinating is that the SEO is going to start showing up in these AI tools too, you know?
The thought experiment with YouTube is, how do you maximize the number of educational videos that have high retention based on all of our educational content that we put out there?
Yeah.
And I'd be interested in doing, what's his name? This guy, Ed, I think it's Film Booth on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about hooks. We've spent so much time working on Twitter hooks, right? That we know how to write good ones, and those have worked, and we've talked about them a ton. That same level of investment in just kind of figuring out YouTube hooks with our editing team, I think is the difference between your videos getting 6 and getting 25. Plus, over time, just more volume and like dialed in. But he gave a great example of like, here are the 2. He did a side-by-side with Dan Martell, got like 4 million views on this one video. It's like, here's Dan reading it from like an old video, just like at the screen. And then here's the one that got 4 million views, almost the same words, but like 8 cuts of different images in the first 8 seconds that like completely took over the screen. It wasn't even still him talking. And then he's like, now watch the one of him talking again. You feel your brain turn off. Like he says 6 words without changing anything. And you're like, I'm out. But when he gives you like, that's how I felt. I was watching it and I'm like, that was so boring relative to like 2 words, image, another small B-roll, same hook. And then you're in on 20 seconds. And I was like, okay, it's just an interesting thought experiment to apply that to every video, because that's the 80-20 of it.
Yeah.
You know,
it is definitely accepting these are the rules of the game. You have to play the game.
Have to. In the same way that we had to write like more clickbaity Twitter threads. And our most viral stuff was always that, you know?
Then how you balance that with the data gathering phase? Because if you put all of those resources in, like, then you test less.
True.
You know?
Yeah. What's so confusing, I agree. And what's so confusing about this is that like the webinar replay, which is a Zoom recording with like a 5-minute no hook intro, is my best performing video of the past month. And that's, you know,
but I've been digging into the analytics. That's the worst retention graph. So you're getting a ton of clicks. So all really that's validating is the headline and the thumbnail. So I would look at that instead of here's the thumbnail and headline.
Retention is down. The retention falls off a cliff, but the watch time is very high.
And so how you get that video to 1 million views is high retention on an hour video. Like that's the secret. And so you validated it's doing well because overall platform watch time is high because it's an hour. So 10% retention on an hour video is way better than 10% retention on a 6-minute video.
Yeah.
Because they're moving and they go somewhere else. But like, that's how I would take that is you validated the topic, the thumbnail, and the title. Now it's, if you were going to take like the same video, post it again in 3 months, but now we're just going to really invest in the first 20 seconds. And like how Ash does that with our content, has repurposed. He's not really rewriting it, but like that to me would be an interesting YouTube strategy for you as you collect more volume. It's like same video, 20 seconds invested on the hook and see what happens. And then you just turn the other one off. That new one takes over all the SEO traffic and you know it's going to have more throughput. Just thought.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But I've been nerding out on this. Like my background brain, because I have your YouTube studio on my phone too. Because when you put out a new video, I'm like, how'd this one do? Okay, interesting. Taking off, but retention graph down versus like the highest retention ones you have are the like life advice. Yeah. They walk in, you know, so there's something there.
Yeah, definitely. That's another thing. It's like half of Hormozi's videos are like an hour and a half, 2 hours, like straight, not like a curation video, just just stimulant for 2 hours. And that's what I want to know is how much, like, how do you prep for that? Because that will give me such an ideal scene of what to replicate. Yeah. Anything specifically you want to learn, ask questions about, curious about?
Mainly the CRO stuff, I think. I mean, I would be curious to hear you guys' thoughts on like what do you think is it like once we unlock that solve that CRO bottleneck, what's next? My guess is sales.
Yeah, it's capacity.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that right now.
Yeah.
And to me, the theoretical max capacity is such that every slot is available for every day within 3 days. And so right now we are missing multiple actually time zones. We have 0 European time zones that are conducive. So I want to hire a closer that specifically takes European leads. And then
just
go ahead, yeah.
so I don't forget,
No.
I might have a lead for that.
Okay,
so
nice.
Remind me.
Great. But that's like, okay, it's actually so simple how it works from there. It's like every time there is the next day at 12 p.m. not available for all 5 closers, we lose opportunity.
Yeah.
And so until every slot is open and you have excess capacity on the closing side, you have a capacity problem. And so we don't know.
That's interesting. We weren't thinking about it that way before.
Right.
We were thinking of it like we have 3 closers and each closer has to be 100% booked.
No, it's just times of day. So it's really not even like the ideal is closers have or more availability. They take calls on weekends. Like we had 2 closes this weekend for the first time. Very, very rare that we have weekend closes. So that's what comes next is like make sure that if you're driving a ton, because the theoretical is if we had 1 billion applications, what's the constraint? Then sales. Okay. Every time we had a closer that is removed, but then obviously there's commissions and things like that at play that they need calls too. So that was kind of what we ran into in November was we had a little bit too much capacity. And then especially in January when it was much slower, you basically can't turn it off. You have to continue with that capacity, which is why to me, bringing on 2 more setters, which is what we're doing right now, to have 4 times the LinkedIn DM ad spend is like the next step, because then you have constant around the clock, at least conversations that could get put on the calendar on top of inbound, on top of webinars, on top of everything else.
That's so interesting. I mean, if we're going to go the route of hiring a closer for European time zones, why not also get someone that's a weekend closer?
Yeah, we
like
should.
Specifically, you work Wednesday through Sunday, you know?
But that's the next step. Because we're at 60, almost 60 units, barely halfway through the month, this month. Like we now have, and that's really with only 3 closers. Like with the marketing stuff that we're doing with all 5 ramped up, I think we'll be at 120, 140 actually this time. Because we had the sales capacity for it in November and we did 100.
Yeah.
You know,
what do you, just to crystallize, I think this would be a great thought experiment for us. What are the core differences or the things that got built or were changed between October, November last year, 5 closers,
and now?
And back then we were funneling a shit ton of cold traffic.
We were spending $3,500 a day on ads. Now we're spending 800. So that's almost $100,000 of ad spend saved. That was sent direct to an application with nothing on it except the application.
Oh yeah, I forgot we did that.
And there was no VSL, there's no explanation, and that was sent directly to the closers who had never talked to a cold lead before. So we had about 4 different problems going on.
That's funny to look back on in hindsight.
But the thing is, what we underestimated during that time was the amount of people who saw the ad that then went to Google and so the reason we had our best month was we had our most paid closes and our most organic closes. So you spend more money on ads, more people see it. So that's what we're doing right now too. Is like that's ramped back up. We're only doing retargeting right now, so it's only ever sending DM ads to people who've seen us before, which I think was better than the cold traffic. And then beyond that, we have zeroed in on, and this is like as I was recapping wins for the year so far, it's that we've fully fleshed out 1 number per department. And that thought, that thinking that I did at the beginning of the year of like, okay, these are the 7 departments. These are the 1 numbers. Here's everyone who's like 100% focused on that one. Having Ash drive as many leads as we're doing, and then having Daniel on top of all the calls and emails, it's like those are the big changes. Is that we have enough organic capacity to fill these right now.
Yep.
I actually have one question that I hadn't thought about for the Hormozi team. And I think we can act on it immediately because next week we have a webinar. They will obviously inside of the portfolio they have a bunch of companies that do webinars. I'll be curious to hear like from their perspective, what's the 80-20 of like squeezing the most juice out of a webinar that we could implement right away next week. But yeah.
A lot of the webinars, obviously it's shiny object, but it's like you turn it into a 2-day or 3-day challenge. And that's Jeremy's big thing. He did it with Cody. They grossed 3.4 million on a 10K direct to checkout sale and on like 300K, 400K ad spend. That's when the video I showed you where he's like, he's paying a daily so 3.4 mil over a 3-day event. Full first day is education, but that's gross right there. So a lot of, they probably paid a bunch of speakers, things like that.
Yep.
All other traffic from the entire business was funneled there for 40 days in selling tickets. He probably spent $500,000 on it. So like a 7-to-1 great return.
It's an amazing return.
But full day of speaking, giant Zoom venue that she rented out to have the speakers come in, like not a bullet point.
Yeah.
Just because you were like,
Run 3-day webinar.
Right. Yeah. not a bullet point whatsoever. But yeah, that would be like where we would go. And his whole thing there is like, if you have a sales team who sucks, you run those because you just direct to checkout. It's like, I don't need you guys, was how he was basically telling Cody to do, which is great for them.
He was running cold to a 10 grand.
No, so tickets. So he broke even on the tickets, spent 500 grand on ads or ish. I don't want to misquote, but like a lot on ads for tickets to the 3-day event.
How much were tickets?
Like
$50?
$50 to $97.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And then you have 10,000 people there.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then you only need 2% conversion on 10,000 people at a 10K product.
Got it.
Right.
Oh man, if we did that, that would crush.
Right.
It would be a huge project, but it would. Wow.
But those he talks about, it's like those are the gravy on top of a consistent system.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
I think that would be the equivalent of doing like the Black Friday launch in terms of work and like logistics. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think two big things that we changed on the marketing side too is monthly webinar, which has absolutely had an impact, and quadrupling our viral drops.
Both those.
Like just those two things, you know.
And we talked about that at my kitchen table in 2 months ago. And we've only run 2 webinars so far.
My big upgrade for the next webinar, which is what I'm picking up from the self-publishing one, is at the end, I'm going to make it 90 minutes, 60 minutes of education, the last 30 minutes Q&A with screen share showing how to fill out the application and book a call. Like literally.
We haven't done that yet?
No.
Okay, great.
Like,
there you go.
Literally like show the screen, answer these questions. We're going to answer them together. Like,
and then you just take questions. It's like, why, if you're on this, why haven't you booked? And if you wanted to throw like a incentive behind it, you could do that too. Like, hey, if you want the AI prompt that we talked about today for whatever you cover next week, anyone who joins PGA over the next chunk of time, gets it or something like that.
Oh, that's a cool idea.
You know, but one of the big lessons I've had so far is when you do a monthly thing 12 times, that's where we're going to be on the webinar at the end of this year. Yeah.
I think we chatted. I don't think we got to share this with you, but I think it would be at some point ideal to have like maybe we don't do it every month, but having like a recurring like pillar webinar that we kind of hone in and refine over time that like we can do every quarter. I think that will be it gives you some like buffer. You don't have to like come up with a brand new one every time, but there's also some compounding of like you continue to perfect it. And I think
you run a Brunson perfect webinar.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what's the best way to make a living as a writer in 25. Right. And then you put that as a VSL free training that you have as a completely different, you put it on YouTube, but also as a lead magnet. Because that's once we have consistent like EEC traffic, then it's how do you just maximize every YouTube video congruence to get on the email list and then funnel that email list into the book a call. Because that's what we did with the post EEC opt-in, because that's going to go live on the page. I don't know if it is or next couple days, right? Yeah.
Tomorrow morning.
Thursday. It doesn't matter. But like right away when I watched it, I was like, we've had 40,000 people that it redirects to say, apply to PGA for one-on-one coaching afterwards. No reference of you, no reference of PGA. No, like they have no clue what it is. And Jeremy pointed out, he's like, I don't know what the fuck that was. And like,
I love Jeremy.
As he was watching that, and I'm like, okay, so that becomes the next like prolific repurposing is how many mini VSLs can we put out that all are very congruent, solve one problem, and then transition to, if you have this problem, you have these, apply. Here's what we can do for you.
I'm ready to get back to work. We haven't even done the event yet.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a nice, and as I was thinking about us potentially having, we were talking about events later on this year.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about the people who go. Every time we've ever gone to an event, we walk away like, we've had a great last 9 weeks. We're seeing the results of it now. Didn't see them in the beginning of February as a bunch of those changes went live and just new hires and things like that. But being that source of inspiration for other people, when they go, okay, cool, I'm going down to Arizona, I'm going to go learn a lot, and then I'm going to come out with a ton of momentum. Like that type of reinvigoration. And Daniel, we talked about if we were going to do, if we have digital writing school fully spun up, which I fully think we can throughout the summer, just do like a $297 event with like a $997 VIP that goes to like an extra couple things. We could talk about pricing, but like, I'd want to fill up a room. I'd want to fill up a big room for that.
Oh yeah.
You know?
And I think it'd be cool to either make it 2 days and do the first day digital writing, second day ghostwriting, or just alternate throughout both days.
Right.
And you can just pick the topics appropriately where it's like on the ghostwriting side, maybe instead of talking about how to pitch clients, it's like, here's how to write in different voices, which appeals to every type of writer.
I mean, we should just sell PGA direct to checkout on stage. Like if you did to digital writing school, it's like, hey, who here's in PGA? A bunch of people make noise. All the digital writers here that want to ghostwrite, sign up now.
You know what was so super interesting was when we were at the last Hormozi event, when they were pitching the VAM upsell, as part of the pitch, they were like, oh, and if you do this right now, you will get this like secret book, which is just like a booklet, you know, it's like a 25-page booklet that you get printed at Kinko's or something. But, you know, it's like, oh, this is the secret book that Alex wrote, but hasn't shared publicly about pricing strategies. And it's like such a simple thing. And you still can't help it. You're like, I want that right now, you know? So coming up with something like that too would be awesome.
Lots on the table there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be fun.
I think if we did the next BAM day around September and then did like early October, probably like 2 weeks later than what we just did. Last year, we did September 28th. If we did like October 14th, and then we have 6 weeks till Black Friday after that.
Perfect.
You know,
perfect.
Like 1 week after the event, nothing, Black Friday sprint.
Yep.
Then run a live ship 30 cohort in January. It's sold to the entire digital writing school is the only live event we do once per year.
That is going to be a wild 3 months. It's going to be awesome.
I can feel my brain hurting already.
Exhausted.
Yeah, exactly.
Exhausted.
All right. Well,
yeah.
I think from here, hopefully we learned a bunch of things on CRO, media team, put them into practice. No shortage of opportunity.
No.
Low ticket launchpad going live in 4 weeks.
Whenever we set the date.
Yeah.
Quick update on that.
What's the date? April 9th? April 11th?
9th.
9th.
9th's a Wednesday.
No, it's a Monday.
Oh, it is?
Well, then it's the 7th.
7th.
I think we moved
it. It's a Monday.
Okay, nice.
It's a Monday.
Nice. Cool.
It's Monday to Monday.
Yeah. You just have to pick a date.
You do.
Best pro tip ever. You just pick a date and then somehow you find a way.
Right. Yep. It just, whatever is done by then is done.
Yeah, that's the product.
Right.
Yeah.
And digital writing
Speaking
school.
of, one of the bonuses we're talking about are the first 5 zaps or the first 10 zaps. So we're gonna
add it to the list.
we're gonna need to strap in on that one
for sure. Count on that.
And then we should have just a module for like now when that goes live, the shelled out digital writing school should be live with some people coming through. And so that is like a locked box. And then we'll figure out the zaps that the ideal scene of someone joining digital writing school, if they've already bought CNC and low ticket launchpad, would be those modules unlock in there for them already.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that difficult because it'll be the same email from school.
Yeah.
So you
as long as the email's the same.
But I think they're already in school. So they're like to to log back into school, they're going to use the same email that CNC and Low Ticket Launchpad are hosted in, right? You would assume. And so then
that's a good point.
Then you just do a lookup of each person that comes in. If they bought this, unlock these, because we're already going to have to build the unlock logic.
Yeah.
With the tokens.
Yeah.
So
it's gonna be a fun project.
Yeah.
What is the logic in?
Like here.
It's just
Airtable.
Oh yeah.
Like Airtable formulas.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So basically, like it looks at like the formula looks at when somebody joined, based on when they joined, determines how many credits they have, and then how many credits they've used, and like you see the difference.
Okay. Cool. Airtable. I just started thinking of the liftoff tool, dude. When you see how this thing works,
so many pieces coming together, man.
Yeah. Nobody is gonna have this. I am so psyched about it. That's all I'm gonna say. That's the teaser.
Oh yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say.
All right, y'all.
Cool. You wanna
do these questions?
Yeah.
Well, that's all we got for this episode of Espresso Hour.
Perfect.
Thanks, Daniel, for joining us. We need to get more of the team going on some of these. I think it'd be fun to kind of do little like hot seats, what's going on this part of the business too.
Yep.
Like, subscribe.
That's a great idea.
You know,
we should do that.